Loslegen. Also herzlich willkommen, welcome to the base camp, welcome Adam. I start in German and then I switch over to English. Also nochmal herzlich willkommen hier im Basecamp. Es ist ein Format, was wir beim letzten Mal erstmalig aufgesetzt haben, heute dementsprechend zum zweiten Mal. Meet Facebook at Basecamp. Wir versuchen hier in Berlin Facebook ein Gesicht zu geben und im Grunde genommen die Kollegen, sei es aus Irland oder aus USA, rüberzubringen nach Berlin, heute zum zweiten Mal. Heute haben wir dabei Adam Connor. Adam Connor, and now I switch to English, welcome to Berlin. It's a pleasure to have you here. So Adam is kind of one of our key colleagues over there in Washington. He actually was the first employee for Facebook in Washington. He joined the company 6 years ago, quite a long while for Facebook. And so everything developed over the years. We have now like around 20 colleagues in DC. And and over the years, as a Democrat, a proud Democrat, Adam became like the key contact for the Obama campaigns inside Facebook, and he was a key counterpart at the last Obama campaign that brought him the victory over there. So. And everybody here, I think, is eager to learn about that and to hear what Obama did right and what the others did wrong, maybe. And so just elaborate on that. And I would say the stage is yours. And after that, we do like a Q&A session and just take it easy and casual as we always do it here. So welcome, Adam, and the stage is yours.
Thank you. This is a great space, so I'm excited to be here. One of the things that I love about this election is that I think that there are lessons that can be learned about this election and about, in particular, the use of Facebook in the election, even if you're not Barack Obama, you're not the President of the United States, and you don't have $1 billion. I think there are lessons that we can learn from this that are very exciting. There's a famous politician in American politics named Tip O'Neill, who is the Speaker of the House of the United States Congress, who had an old saying that was, all politics is local. And that meant, in his mind, that the pothole outside of somebody's street was as important as the federal budget to the average citizen. And so a congressman needed to be as attuned to the things that were happening locally as he was nationally. And we think that that's still true, but we also think that in the 21st century, politics today is now social. And all politics is in fact social. And I think this is great because it has two meanings. The first is, of course, that these new technologies like Facebook, like Twitter, have an ability to move us from what had traditionally been more of a broadcast mindset, as defined by television commercials and 30-second sound bites, to something more of a two-way conversation. It's something that allows people to engage in a way they were not able to engage in the process before. It also is great because politics, when you think about it, has always fundamentally been social. Because politics has always been about talking to people, asking for their vote, listening to them. And so the building blocks, the fundamentals of politics have always been social. The world has changed. It is more connected today than it has ever been before. I love this graphic that one of our colleagues made because it shows the connections between people on Facebook. And when you work in politics like I do, when you work with the government, people tend to think about boundaries. They think about the lines that are drawn by commissions to say this is a district, this is a state, this is a country. But as you can see from this map, the connections between people, they now cross those boundaries. They cross state lines, they cross borders, they cross oceans, they span continents. And one of the things that I think is most important to understand about the way that the internet has changed the world is that influence is no longer contained geographically. In the past, influence was about proximity. The most influential in your people in your life, because you had regular contact with them, were your neighbors who you saw every day, or the people your children went to school with, or your coworkers. But today, because people are increasingly connected, the most influential person in your life may be your neighbor next door, or it might be somebody who lives half a world away. And understanding how to take advantage of that is really, I think, key to communicating in the 21st century. Just a statistic to say why we thought this election was important and why people like the Obama campaign and the Romney campaign should invest in Facebook. There were more Americans on Facebook over the age of 18 and thus eligible to vote in our election than actually voted in either 2008 or 2012. So just think about that. There are more people on Facebook who can vote than who actually voted to decide the President of the United States in 2008 or 2012. So this is not a place where only young people are. This is not a place where just a few people are. This isn't just a place where you can make up the margin of victory. This is the place where you can find enough people to win. Zach Moffat, who is the digital director of the Romney campaign, and my colleague Katie worked very closely with the Romney campaign as my counterpart, really had something that I think helps you understand the landscape of communications that we were in 2012. Zach loved to show this graph here. And what this is a graph that shows that 31% of all people in America and 40% of people in Ohio had not watched any live television that week except for a live sporting event, like a football game. So the only live television they had watched was sports. That means that if they watched any television, they were watching a DVR. And if you're watching a DVR, 88% of people skip commercials when they're watching TV on a DVR. What does that mean? Well, for the last 30 or 40 years in American politics, the primary method of communication for a presidential campaign was a television advertisement. You spent all of this money and you bought all of these TV ads to influence people. But this is what it looks like when 40% of Ohio isn't watching television commercials. It's somewhere in the order of 2 million people. And when you look in 2000, 2004, and 2008 elections in the key state of Ohio, which determined those elections, 165,000 people, 118,000 people, and 262,000 people were the margin of victory. So all of a sudden the question remains, can you afford to ignore 2 million people, to not reach 2 million people, and still win an election today in America? Teddy Goff, who is the digital director for Obama for America, liked to talk, or not like to, but talked after the election about the fact that of the Obama campaign's 18 to 29-year-old voter targets, of the people that they needed to go out and overwhelmingly vote for the president in order for them to win, half of them were no longer able to be reached by phone. Now you've probably heard similar things as we do in the States. People don't have landline phones anymore. They don't have physical phones. So the question was always, there's this shift to mobile phones. But half of the 18 to 29-year-olds couldn't even be reached by mobile phones. So all of a sudden, you can't reach 40% of Ohio by television commercials. You can't reach half of 18 to 29-year-olds by mobile phones. What do you do in order to reach them, in order to convince them to go out and vote for you and win? The Pew Center for Internet Life in America did some really interesting studies around the 2010 election. As we were coming into these are things we were thinking about a lot. People who are active on social media, Twitter, Facebook, they're 57% more likely to try and persuade a friend or coworker to vote. They are 2.5 times more likely themselves to participate in an event or rally, and they're 43% more likely to vote themselves. So people on social media are both more likely to try and convince their friends to vote and more likely to vote themselves. And one of the reasons that's important is because we really believe at Facebook that friends are among the most influential messengers that you can have. And we worked with a University of California scientist to do a study in 2010. We ran an experiment with 61 million of our users in the United States election, where we showed some of them a message that said go vote, and we showed the other ones the names and faces of their friends who said they had already voted. And it turns out that close friends made all the difference, and that by our estimates, more than 600 or 300,000 additional people went out and voted because they saw that their friends were voting. So you have these pieces falling into place that set the landscape. 40% of voters in a swing state you can't reach through TV advertising. Half of them you can't reach through cell phones or any kind of phone. People on Facebook and on social media are more likely to vote and convince their friends to vote. People are more likely to go vote if they know their friends are voting. And this is an election that candidly people were paying attention to, but we were all a little surprised by that. 2008 was, as someone who's worked in now, this was my third presidential campaign, something we never thought would be topped. And the attention that was paid in 2008 was higher than any other election we'd seen. And if you think back to those events, the market crash right before the election, people were attuned. And coming into 2012, there was an expectation that this would not be an election people were paying as much attention to. People knew who Barack Obama was. People thought things were not quite as exciting, and there wasn't as many primaries to deal with. But what this graph shows is an analysis we did in December of 2012 on the top 10 most talked about events on Facebook in 2012 in the United States. Top 10 events in the United States that were talked about. And 7 of these 10 events were related to the US election. The Olympics isn't even on here. So 7 of these 10 most talked about things in the election or in the 2012 were election related. 1 or 2 of them were American football related, and 1 was the Hurricane Sandy, which crashed into New York and New Jersey right before the election. So you've got people talking about the election on Facebook. You've got people who can't be reached any other way. What does this all mean together? How do you take this technology, these users, these voters, and push them out to vote and really influence an election? And that was the question we asked and worked with both campaigns and outside groups on this cycle. One of the things I think is really important to understand about Facebook from the beginning is that Facebook is not solely just Facebook.com. You know, it is obviously the place that you type in the browser, facebook.com, and you see content there. But Facebook is other things as well. It is a technology platform that you've seen across the internet with like buttons, or if you've ever looked at an Android or iPhone app that lets you use Facebook. It's also an advertising platform that allows you to reach our billion users and with targeted messaging. All of these things were increasingly coming together as Facebook evolved over the course of the 2012 campaign. One of the things that we always like to talk about is the importance of targeting your messaging to the right audience. And if you were in Germany or New York or Washington, where most reporters were, you would go to the Mitt Romney Facebook page, or you would go to the Barack Obama Facebook page, and you wouldn't see that many posts. And you would think, oh, they're only updating once a day. Because what you weren't seeing is that both campaigns were taking full advantage of our ability to really target messages. The Romney campaign was running 50 or 60 messages a day on their Facebook page to voters in Florida or Ohio or women, targeted messages to try and get them to be persuaded to vote for their candidate. One of the other things that's really important to talk about is that reach and potential influence on Facebook. A lot of people look at a Facebook page and they look at the big number, how many likes there are, and in particular President Obama, by the fact that he was running in 2008, that he was president of the United States for 4 years, had a lot of Facebook fans, 34 million people in fact. But what's most important about that, what's actually more important than that 34 million number, is that through the friends of those fans, through those friends of their connections, through 1 degree of separation, the Obama campaign's Facebook page was connected to 98% of the US users on Facebook. So so every single person on Facebook in the United States had a friend who supported the President of the United States. That's huge potential reach. The Obama and Romney campaign also utilized the Facebook pages. They also utilized advertising. And one of the things that's a key innovation about advertising on Facebook is what we call social context. Instead of just being the messenger from the advertiser itself, Obama telling you to go vote, what we do at Facebook is we look to harness the power of social. So we wanted to let you know that your friends liked Barack Obama, that they were supporting him, what we call sponsored stories or social advertising. So really working to make supporters the messengers for the president. And you know, I think while the president started off, as I said, with a lot of Facebook fans, the Romney campaign was in a very different place. They started 2012 with about 1 million fans on Facebook. But by the end of 2012, through a combination of advertising, their organic growth, and taking smart advantage of Facebook, they had more than 12 million fans on Facebook, which is a tremendous number and shows that just in 11 months they were able to go very far. An even greater example of how quickly these things can happen through a combination of attention, organic growth, and paid media is when Paul Ryan was selected to be vice president's nominee for Mitt Romney. They started a new Facebook page for him called Paul Ryan VP. And it went from 0 fans to 5 million fans in 2 months. So there was a tremendous appetite among supporters to connect with the candidates and integrate and engage with Facebook. One of the other things that we did at Facebook was spend a lot of time thinking about technology. And for those of you that have ever used a Facebook app or played a game or logged in through Facebook iPhone application, you know that Facebook is a platform technology. We have thousands of more than 9 million websites that are integrated with Facebook and thousands of applications. And what we did is we worked with some of those developers to build applications specifically targeted to this election, to people who wanted to use it to register to Facebook, to register people to vote, or turn them out to vote. And while we would not say that an application is the right fit for everyone all the time, there are certain times and places where it makes the most sense to leverage what we call that social graph. We saw some really fascinating examples of this, actually. Oops. this cycle. So people who would allow you to figure out your friends on Facebook and contact them about an election in the state. Turning and gamifying things, asking you to call people and ask them to vote and giving you badges and awards for participating. And then committing to vote, seeing your friends who are also voting and asking them to vote as well. Utilizing social context and social pressure in order to encourage more people to vote. Now, American elections don't start in the year that they actually occur. So the 2012 election actually started in 2011, or really 2010 or 2009, but it really got it to heat up in 2011. Tim Pawlenty, who is the governor of Minnesota, announced that he was running for president on Facebook in 2011. He would actually drop out of the race in 2011 as well, so he didn't even make it to 2012. That's how long the American political process is these days. As the Republicans were battling it among themselves to see who would face Barack Obama, they started using technology as their edge as they tried to survive week to week. They would do things like Newt Gingrich did, like create a call tool on Facebook, people to tell their friends they were calling to support Mitt Romney. John Huntsman would allow you to connect with his site on Facebook, and your picture would be added to a map of all of his supporters. So people were trying to use this technology in order to win the election. When Mitt Romney won the nomination and was the nominee, he had to grow his team very quickly in a small amount of time. So by the end of the election cycle, he had about 160 people who were working on digital on his team. And the Romney campaign invested tremendously in Facebook. I think some of that has been lost in the overshadowing of talking about what Obama has done on Facebook. But they invested very heavily, and they did some very smart things. They built an application on Facebook called Commit to Mitt, which was great because it had a great name, but also allowed people to tell their friends they were working, they were supporting Mitt Romney. And so they leveraged their investment. But one of the things about incumbency, one of the things about Barack Obama already being president of the United States, was that they had more time on the Obama campaign to get things right, to build things. And so the Obama campaign had an in-house technology team of several hundred people who started years beforehand preparing for the election. And one of the things they did was try and figure out how they could utilize social, how they could truly utilize something like Facebook to do their stated goals. Campaigns, when you take a step back, are actually not very complicated entities. They have one goal, which is to win. And the only way to win is to get more votes than the other guy. So what you have to do in that scenario is find the voters, persuade the voters to vote for you, and then get them to physically vote for you. 3 things. Everything else is built around those 3 core concepts. So the Obama campaign used Facebook in the service of technology for this. So when you went to the Barack Obama website, all you could do was log in through either barackobama.com or Facebook, because that was what was most valuable to them. What they chose to do was try and add social elements to what have been very traditional campaign tools. So in the past, you would make phone calls sitting in an office, or you would make phone calls sitting at your computer by yourself. But by adding social context, by enabling Facebook to be a part of this, you could see your friends who were calling for Barack Obama with one click, join them in calling voters for the president. They also spent a lot of time on something called targeting sharing, which I'll come back to, which was really about taking that element of figuring out the voters they wanted to talk to and communicating with them in a new medium. On election day, if you were to not be in a swing state, so Ohio or Florida or those critical couple of states that matter in America's funny election system, you would go to barackobama.com and you would see this. And it was just something that asked you to share the fact you were voting for the president on Facebook. Because on election day, one of the most valuable things you could do with one click was tell people that you were voting for the president, tell your friends that you were voting for the president. And what that did and allowed people to do is share that over and over and really see that social pressure. And I think that was just a tremendous way to leverage Facebook in the scenario. I talked a little bit about the challenges the Obama campaign faced. And one of the things that's really important before we go any further is to say the Obama campaign built their campaign not around technology. They built it around people. They fundamentally believed from the top to the bottom that the most effective way to persuade a voter is not a television commercial, it's not something on Facebook, but the most effective thing you can do is talk to somebody face to face. So the entire plan was the most effective thing we can do is talk to someone in person. And they built an entire operation around that. Their goal was to have one contact or one staffer or volunteer for every 50 voters they wanted to talk to. To give you a sense of context and scale, The Romney campaign was operating at a ratio of about 1 staffer or volunteer to every 100,000 voters that they wanted to talk to. So they were operating on a scale where it was important to make that real world contact. But you're not always able to make that real world contact. So what are the other ways we can get to the audiences we want to persuade? I mentioned earlier what Teddy had said, that half of their 18 to 29-year-olds couldn't be reached by phone. But the other part about that is 85% of those people without a listed phone number could be found on Facebook. And so faced with that, they told us Facebook became the only place that we could reach them. And so what they did is they built something called targeted sharing. The Obama campaign manager, Jim Messina, has called this the most important thing we built in the cycle, which is, I think, fairly high praise from the winning candidate. And what it was is you would log into the BarackObama.com website through Facebook. I would ask you to go through our privacy settings and checks and say, do you want to give certain information to the Obama campaign that they're going to use? And you would say yes, and they would take your friend list and they would match it against the voter file. In America, voting records are public, whether or not you're registered to vote and whether or not you voted. Not who you voted for, but whether or not you voted in 2008 or 2004, that sort of thing. And what they would do is they would figure out the audience that they wanted to go out and vote for them, because you don't want to get Romney voters out to vote for you, you want to get Obama voters out to vote for you. So they would match that, and they would show you their friends, your friends that they wanted you to contact. They would show you your friends they thought weren't registered to vote. They would show you your friends who hadn't voted yet, and they would ask you to please contact them. More than 1 million people authorized this Facebook application, and they made more than 7 million contacts of people. And that had, according to them, a 20% action rate of people who donated, volunteered, registered to vote, or voted. That is a phenomenally high number in online action, higher than anything, honestly, I've ever seen. And why did it work? What was the secret sauce that made it all work? Dan Wagner, who's the director of analytics for the Obama campaign, said, we are not just sending you a banner ad, we're giving you relevant information from your friends. And when you think about it, of course a message coming from a friend is going to be more effective, more influential. As Teddy put it, people, they don't trust campaigns. They don't trust media organizations. Who do they trust? They trust their friends. And when a friend asks you to register to vote, when a friend asks you to vote, that's a very powerful thing. One of the things that has happened in this cycle and after the election is that people tend to focus on the data. They say, oh, this is the election of big data. It's all about data. Data won this election. This is, I think, a really interesting point, because citizens aren't data. This is what I look like to the Obama campaign database. This is actually a screenshot of what I would look like if I were a computer. But from the Obama campaign, and the lesson I think we can all learn from this, is that citizens aren't data. Voters aren't data. We're people. And when you treat people like people, when you communicate with them, when the goal ultimately is to have a conversation with someone, to listen to them, and to engage them, it's more successful. You're going to be better than just broadcasting, yelling at someone. So what are the lessons that we can learn if we're not Barack Obama and we don't have $1 billion? One is simply to target to the relevant audiences. If you have a communication strategy, you want to know who you're trying to talk to. And then you want to deliver that message to the audience. So Facebook pages, for instance, and I'm not sure if anyone here runs a Facebook page, have tremendous targeting capabilities so that you can post a message to your fans that live in one geographic location, but not the other, or who speak one language on Facebook, but not have it show to the people who don't speak that language, or only a message that goes to females instead of males. So you can really create targeted, relevant information to people. The example I always give is, if there's an event happening 3,000 miles away, that's not useful information for me. That's just annoying to me. But if that event is happening 5 minutes from my door, that's the most relevant information you can provide me. Using that targeted information is really important. Understanding how that friend of fan potential and maximizing it is key to understanding how to succeed on Facebook. So this is a graph to illustrate the point. This is a Facebook page we did an analysis of in the United States. And it has about 200,000 fans on Facebook, which is a very large number. But through that friend of fan, through that 1 degree of separation, that Facebook fan page has the potential to reach 27 million people on Facebook in the United States. That's a significantly higher number, and a way that shows you that really potential reach, and something that you can reach on Facebook through either organic or paid media or some combination of those. And to do that, when there is something important on Facebook, we have the tools to make sure that your message gets out there when you want it to get out there. So for instance, on every Facebook page now, there's something called Promote a Post, which will help you extend the reach of what people may naturally see on Facebook. because you remember, you're competing against a lot of other things in the newsfeed. Cute pictures of dogs, pictures of people's grandkids, status updates from your friends. So it's important to help extend the reach when you need to. The way I always describe it is if you were to run a television commercial, you wouldn't spend all this money to create it and make it and then never pay a dime to actually broadcast it and just leave it on a shelf. When messages are important, and particularly around elections, because everybody on election day is asking you to go vote, you really need to get that message out there. And finally, authenticity, which is really something we talk about a lot in social media, but I think is easy to illustrate when you see it, because you know it when you see it. This is a photo that the Obama campaign posted after it was announced they won. It actually wasn't from election night. It was from August in Iowa. And it had more than 4.4 million likes. It's the most retweeted photo of all time as well. And it's just a very authentic moment that I think really worked. And Laura Olin, who was my friend who ran Facebook and outbound social, Tumblr, Twitter for the Obama campaign, had this to say, you know, running our social media platform, my team discovered and rediscovered that people generally responded to the photos depicting the president at his most human, as a relatable person, not the trappings of his office. It was the feeling behind it that was the most important thing. You know, elections are fundamentally about several things. They're about policies and how they impact people, about communications, but they are ultimately about candidates, but they're ultimately about voters, and voters are people. And understanding how to capture that emotion is something we think can be universal. And you know, as I've gone across Europe and talked a little bit about this election, we've heard a lot about how obviously our systems are different, how you know these things may be taken into account. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, the key to democracy is that the people who participate, you know, they are the ones who are essential, and that no matter how different the systems are in those systems, treating people like people and communicating to them like on that level is, I think, a very powerful thing that Facebook enables. One of the things we've seen even since the campaign is that has carried forward. These understandings and lessons have carried forward as the president governs now. The White House, which I helped get on Facebook several years ago, has that cover photo at the top. And after the tragic shooting in Newtown, Connecticut, after the election, he gave a press conference where he cried. And the White House changed their cover photo to be a picture of the president crying. 5 years ago, when we had started using Facebook for government, I don't think any of us could have expected that the thing that would feel right to do would be a picture, putting a picture of the President of the United States crying, so the first thing you saw when you went was that, but it worked. It resonated at a moment in emotion that was true, and it was honest, and it was genuine. So if we were to put this into bullet points, we were to say, well, Adam, what are the 4 things that you would want me to remember? It would be this. Targeting is important. You want to find your audience, you want to find the right audience, but messengers are just as important. The message you're giving people and where it's coming from is as important as who you're trying to talk to, and can make all of the difference in the world. And what we know is that friends talking to friends is the most powerful messengers that you have. There's nothing more powerful than a friend talking to a friend. So that when the President of the United States was able to turn his supporters into evangelists for him, and to his kind of people who were doing the convincing for him, it was more effective than any television commercial that we could make. And finally, voters are people too, and citizens are people too. And understanding that and always keeping that at the forefront of your mind, you're not talking to a computer screen. You're not talking to an iPad. What you're doing is you're talking to the people on the other end of that. And we always want to keep that in mind as we have this, because we think that will make a better and more engaging society and a better and more entertaining election, certainly. And with that, I think we're happy to move to discussion and questions. This was our unofficial team logo. FTW means for the win. So this was what we thought would be our internet team's logo. And so thank you all, and we're happy to kind of take questions now.